Restaurant guests, diverse group, mixed skin tones, dressed in semi-formal attire, dresses, button-up shirts, slacks in muted colors. She was used to working long hours, serving every guest with a smile, listening attentively, and quietly enduring the little comments that people sometimes threw her way. Nia Johnson had been working as a server at one of the city's finest restaurants for 3 years. Every day she walked in wearing her crisp uniform, carrying trays with grace and professionalism, maintaining the kind of composure that made her colleagues admire her quietly. Nia had dreams, aspirations beyond serving tables, but she knew that right now, her job required patience, dignity, and resilience. She was known for her calm demeanor, her ability to handle even the most difficult customers without losing her poise. She loved interacting with people, seeing the joy on their faces when she recommended a perfect dish or remembered their favorite drink. Today, however, the restaurant seemed unusually tense. A table had been reserved for a regular customer who had a reputation for being difficult, Mark Henderson. Mark had been coming to this restaurant for years, and over time, his charm had revealed a sharp edge, a need to dominate and belittle those he deemed beneath him. As Nia approached the table with a freshly poured glass of wine, Mark glanced up and his eyes flickered with amusement, a smirk appearing on his face. He looked her over with an intensity that made her stomach tighten ever so slightly. "Well, if it isn't Nia," he said, his voice carrying a tone meant to unsettle. "I hope you remembered who's speaking here. I wouldn't want you to forget your place while you were standing in front of me." Nia gave him a polite smile, her hand steady on the tray. She knew this type of remark was designed to provoke, to test her patience. And yet, she stayed calm. She had faced people like Mark before, and had learned that responding with anger only gave them more control. As she began taking the orders from his table, Mark's comments continued, slipping into snide observations about her accent, the way she carried herself, even the way her uniform fit. Other customers began to notice, some fidgeting in their seats, glancing at Nia with concern. Her colleague John, who had been working nearby, offered her a subtle nod, silently telling her he saw what was happening and that he admired her calm. Nia's inner voice was a mix of frustration and self-restraint. She knew he was trying to humiliate her, to make her feel small in front of the people around her. And yet, she repeated silently to herself the words that had kept her grounded for years: patience, dignity, composure. This was a test, and she would not fail it. As she served his table, Mark's comments grew sharper, more personal. "You're so polite," he said with a sneer, "almost as if you're trying to convince yourself that you deserve to be here, serving people like me." Nia held her smile, pouring his wine with precise care, her voice even and measured. "Thank you for your feedback, sir. Would you like me to recommend a dish that's particularly popular today?" She deflected the insult gracefully, maintaining her professionalism, and yet inside, she felt the familiar sting of injustice. The other guests at the restaurant whispered quietly, sensing the tension but unsure how to react. Nia continued to take orders and serve dishes with unwavering composure, her mind focused on keeping the situation from escalating. She knew that her dignity could not be taken away, but the repeated mockery began to weigh on her like a silent pressure. She moved through the restaurant with quiet strength, her every step a testament to her control, her every gesture a careful balance of courtesy and defiance. Mark, however, seemed determined to push her further, his smirk widening as he made a comment about her appearance, a joke meant to embarrass her in front of everyone at the table. The other guests flinched, some lowering their eyes, uncomfortable with the audacity of his words. And then Nia paused for just a brief moment, catching her own reflection in the polished surface of the wine bottle. She thought about every day she had shown up, every moment she had endured, every ounce of patience she had mustered to get to this point. She thought about the countless hours she had spent working, the dreams she had nurtured quietly, the dignity she had preserved despite the cruelty of people like Mark. Her eyes met his, steady, unwavering, and she made a decision. But before that moment, let me ask you, the viewer, where are you watching from? What city is this story reaching today? Take a moment to comment below and tell us. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to support stories like this. Because now, what Nia was about to do would leave everyone in the restaurant stunned. She took a slow breath, carefully placing the plate in front of him. And then, with the calmest voice she could muster, she said, "I understand you have certain expectations of service, sir. I also hope you understand that respect is not something reserved only for those in positions of power. Everyone here deserves it equally." The words hung in the air, cutting through the murmurs at nearby tables. Mark's smirk faltered for the first time, replaced by a flicker of confusion. Nia continued, her voice steady but firm. "I have served you and many others with courtesy and professionalism because that is my job. But it is also my right to be treated with dignity. Your comments and mockery are not only unnecessary, they are unacceptable." The restaurant fell silent. The tension was palpable, as if every guest and employee was holding their breath. John watched her, impressed by the courage she displayed, knowing that she had not lashed out with anger, but had claimed her space with authority. Even Sarah, the manager, felt a swell of pride at Nia's words. Mark tried to respond, opening his mouth, but no words came. The guests around him exchanged glances, some nodding subtly in support of Nia, others still processing the unexpected confrontation. It was in that silence, in the stillness of the room, that the power of Nia's composure became clear. She had turned humiliation into a statement of strength. She had shown that mockery and prejudice had no power over someone who knew their worth and carried themselves with integrity. But the story wasn't over yet. There was more to come, more to shift, more to reveal, and the consequences of this single moment would ripple through the entire restaurant, changing perceptions, shaking assumptions, and challenging the arrogance of one very powerful man. Mark Henderson opened his mouth, searching for a retort, but every insult he had relied upon seemed to evaporate in the face of Nia's unwavering calm. The other guests, initially silent witnesses, began to murmur among themselves, quietly voicing approval for the way she had handled confrontation. Even those who had previously avoided looking at the table now met her gaze, silently acknowledging the courage it took to speak out. Nia stood there, hands steady, shoulders squared, embodying a strength that was impossible to ignore. Mark's face reddened, his smirk replaced by an expression he had not expected, a mixture of embarrassment and shock. He attempted to speak again, trying to assert the dominance he had always wielded with such ease, but the room had shifted. The power dynamic was no longer his. "Perhaps I spoke out of turn," he muttered, his voice low, lacking the confidence he usually carried. Nia responded with the same calm composure, her words measured and deliberate. "Acknowledging mistakes is a first step toward respect, sir. It is never too late to act with decency." The shift in the atmosphere was immediate. Guests who had initially recoiled from the tension now felt relief and admiration. Some whispered congratulations under their breath, while others exchanged glances that said plainly that they had learned a lesson they would not forget. Sarah, the manager, stepped forward, her voice carrying authority tempered with respect. "Nia has represented our restaurant with professionalism and grace," she said. "Her conduct is exemplary, and she deserves recognition for handling a difficult situation with such poise." John, the young colleague who had watched from the sidelines, couldn't hide his admiration. He had seen countless instances of customers belittling staff, and he had never witnessed a response so composed, so effective, so dignified. Nia allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. She had endured the mockery and maintained her composure, proving that strength does not always come from force or aggression, but from the quiet assertion of self-worth. Mark Henderson, now visibly unsettled, rose from his chair and left the table without another word, leaving behind a silence filled with respect and acknowledgement for Nia. The guests at the restaurant began to applaud softly, some nodding appreciatively, others murmuring about how impressive her conduct had been. It was a moment of triumph, not just for her, but for anyone who had ever been subjected to ridicule and injustice. The ripple effect of her actions continued to spread through the restaurant. People she had served, who had watched her endure mockery with grace, approached her with words of admiration and encouragement. Some even asked for her advice, or simply thanked her for standing up in a way that inspired them. Sarah, standing nearby, placed a hand lightly on Nia's shoulder. "You set an example tonight that will be remembered," she said softly. Nia nodded, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. This was not merely about a single customer or a single confrontation. It was about asserting the dignity that belongs to everyone, regardless of how they are treated. Later, as the restaurant returned to its normal rhythm, Nia reflected quietly on the events. She thought about the patience she had cultivated over years, the composure she had relied upon, and the courage it had taken to finally speak. It was a lesson in self-respect, in the power of calm authority, and in the ability to turn moments of injustice into opportunities for moral victory. The guests who remained thanked her once again, acknowledging not only her skill as a server, but her integrity as a person. John approached her, a mixture of admiration and relief on his face. "I couldn't have imagined handling it better myself," he admitted. "You were incredible." Nia allowed herself a laugh, soft and relieved. "Sometimes the quietest actions speak the loudest," she replied. By the end of the evening, the story of her confrontation had traveled beyond the walls of the restaurant, becoming a tale of justice, dignity, and courage. It was shared among regular patrons, discussed quietly at nearby tables, and ultimately became an example of how a single individual can assert their worth without resorting to anger or aggression. Nia's life continued, but now with a renewed sense of self-assurance. She had demonstrated that strength could be gentle, courage could be calm, and justice could emerge from patience and dignity. Her actions reminded everyone who witnessed them that mockery and prejudice have no power over those who know their value. And as she wiped down tables and prepared for the next day, she felt a quiet confidence that radiated from within, a knowledge that she had changed not just her own circumstances, but the perceptions of everyone around her. If you were inspired by Nia's story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to support more stories like this. Share your thoughts in the comments about how you would have handled such a situation, and remember that dignity, patience, and courage can transform even the most difficult moments into triumphs.